Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is defending the £5 billion worth of cuts to the welfare system announced yesterday, saying people should feel valued for working, like his dad, who, in his words, loved his job making tools.
That was GMB's Susanna Reid introducing the Prime Minister as a punchline this morning in the wake of his government's slashing of disability and incapacity benefits. But Keir Starmer, for once, isn't the biggest joke in the Labour Party. That honour belongs to this man, Torsten Bell, formerly head of the Resolution Foundation, which aims to improve the standards of living for low to middle income families. He's now a Treasury Minister in Starmer's government. And he's appeared on Newsnight to defend the government's cuts. Brace yourself.
But in the meantime, some young people are going to be living on around £70 a week.
No, people with significant disabilities will be protected. They will not only will they be protected within the universal credit system, which is the one you're mentioning, but they'll also be able to apply for personal independence payments. So people with significant disabilities, if they are young, if they're currently receiving UC Health, they will continue to receive it. And if they have significant disabilities, they will still be able to apply for personal independence payment. But we are not going to write off 21-year-olds.
For those who can't, they'll be living on about 70 quid.
We are not going to write off 21-year-olds as unable to work.
For those who can't, they'll be living on about £70 a week. Could you live on 70 quid a week?
Absolutely not.
So why do you expect young people to?
We won't. We provide housing benefit as well, and we'll provide personal independence payments.
This is cash in their pocket. This is 70 quid.
So are the things I just mentioned to you. So are the things I just mentioned to you. That's how the benefit system works. If people need help with their rent, they receive that as well. If they need support with a disability, personal independence payments is there for that as well.
So to buy food, to pay bills,
yes,
70 quid a week.
No.
You've just told me you couldn't live on that.
Well, no, I have a mortgage to pay.
Victoria, I have a mortgage to pay. I'm a fine, upstanding member of the bourgeoisie, a member of Parliament, no less, not the kind of person who could be expected to count my pennies on 70 quid a week. I'm a mortgage holder, not a revolting prole. At least we know that Labour's cut their MP's media training budget, though. But the arrogance and entitlement literally oozing out of that over-promoted cardboard cutout of a man is nothing compared to the hypocrisy. A little less than a year ago, so before the general election, Torsten Bell penned this piece for The Guardian. It's immoral to push children into poverty, but that's what the benefits cap does. A month after that piece came out, Bell was parachuted into Swansea West as the constituency's Labour candidate. There were just like no locals who could fill the role, just this one smarmy technocrat willing to do anything for a sniff at power. A few months later, and just a month before the election, Bell appeared on Politics Joe, where he said this.
The two-child limit is a really big deal. It has increased poverty. It's a terrible policy. It's done exactly what we knew it would do, and it's done it in a terrible way, and it's rolling out for years. I think all parts of the Labour Party think this is a terrible policy, and all parts of the Labour Party will want to see it abolished at some point. If we've chosen to have a policy which the Conservatives have put in place to say if there are more than 3 children in the family, you won't be receiving any benefits for those children, is it a surprise that all of the increase in child poverty recently is amongst larger families? It's done exactly what the kind of chart that the minister would have been given when they signed off that policy said it would do.
Well, we all know what happened to that powerful Labour desire to reverse the two-child benefit cap. Faced with a chance to scrap the impoverishing measure, they voted to keep it. And Torsten Bell voted to keep it too, greasing the pole of his political career with food snatched straight from children's mouths. Sure enough, he slid up that pole and into his current 90 grand a year ministerial position, happily shilling for the further immiseration of the country's poorest. What a small sum for a man's soul. And, I don't normally like to comment on people's appearances, but, that man has aged in less than a year. It's almost like he's a sort of children's party balloon animal that's fallen behind the sofa, slowly sagging as his principles just leak out of him. Mike, tell us, what the hell happened to Torsten Bell?
What does it profit a man if he gains the world and loses his soul? Genuinely, this is everything that's wrong with our politics, right? I think of so many people who want to go into politics and want to do so with this strong desire to change the world. But you have to stand by your principles. You can't, so passionately speak out against child poverty, in The Guardian, on Politics Joe, and hold these really strong principles. And then less than a year later, just completely throw his principles away. What's the point of it? What's the point of being a member of Parliament if those principles that supposedly drew you into politics are just being abandoned with very little kind of friction or fight. You know, and I think so many people are skeptical about politicians, right? If there's some polling data, I don't know if there's some polling data on this in kind of recent years about which profession do you trust the most. I think politicians will rank quite lowly. You know, I think people's perceptions of politicians, especially with the Boris Johnson stuff and Partygate and all the millions of things that have happened in the last 20, 30 years, you know, it's quite low. And I think this contributes to it. You know, we have a politician here who has built a career in many ways on speaking out against child poverty, speaking out against, you know, the oppression of marginalized groups, and less than a year later, thrown his values in a way. I actually think it's genuinely sad to see, like really, really sad to see, and it almost erodes my hope in politics. Right, is if someone could just U-turn back quickly on his principles, you know, the system might just be screwed up. Like, maybe this isn't the way to achieve change. You know, and some people go into politics, you know, and there's some really good eggs in the Labour Party who asked, even with the kind of against the best wishes of their political careers moving forward in terms of being promoted to front bench positions, are still holding firm to their kind of really strong convictions that brought them into politics in the first place. I'm thinking about someone like, you know, Sarah Sultana, Nadia Ratome. Obviously, we know Diane Abbott's been kind of vocal on this issue and stood her ground. But I do worry about some people who enter in politics and like you say, Torsten looks like he's aged. He's aged as he's kind of sold his principles there. So for me, the big takeaway from that is the system screwed up if someone, you know, U-turns and sells out essentially so quickly and so cheaply, because fundamentally, I think there are some things you have to stand on no matter what. You have to, if you're someone who vocally champions, you know, big families who are suffering and the two-child benefit cap being a real problem for those families, stand on that. Show some principle, show some fight, stand for something. That's what life's all about. So it's gutting for me to kind of see that, genuinely gutting and sad. And it shows that, unfortunately, for some people, the pursuit of power and having power is the most important thing, rather than actually changing the world and making it a better place.
You are a much, much better man than me, because I don't feel sad or sorry for this guy. I feel so angry with him and angry with a lot of them in the Parliamentary Labour Party at the moment, like real rage. And I feel like that's a feeling that a lot of other people have across the country when they look not just as this, although this is the cherry on top, but at the two-child benefit cap, at the winter fuel allowance, you know, what is now a pattern of really targeting the poorest people in this country. And that fury, I think, has nowhere to go. And that's a real problem. Like, there are sparks of like revolutionary feeling flying here. And the only embers that they're lighting are reforms. So what I want to know, and I want to ask you about this, where is this left-wing party that we need? Where are the people who are putting this together? And why isn't it coming already? We need it now, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And just to be clear, I do feel anger. Like I'm really irritated about what Labour are doing. I'm angry about the fact that we're seeing essentially continuation of what we saw for the last 14 years, where the most marginalised groups are being targeted, whether it's migrants, whether it's people who are in need of government support. So many different groups, young people, are being targeted by this government. It's a genuine disgrace. And if you woke up and closed your eyes and looked at all the policies that Labour have passed in the last however long since they've been in government, so many of them just scream Conservative Party. So many of them scream Conservative and Unionist Party. So it's a genuine disgrace that Labour are doing this. In terms of a left-wing party and where we use this anger, it's difficult. I think the Green Party are a genuine viable alternative. I do think that when it comes to opposing so many of the problematic policies we've seen, whether it's the two-child benefit cap, whether it's the current welfare changes, the Green Party MPs have been consistent and have been vocal in speaking out against them. And I think the Green Party MPs, broadly speaking, have been on the right side of history so far during their time in Parliament. I do wonder if that kind of if that becomes a bigger, broader movement and if people can get behind it. But I certainly think the Greens, for me, based on the things I know that they're doing and the noises they've made since they've been in Parliament, they might be the best place for us to kind of vent our anger and mobilise and get behind. I think they're doing some good stuff.
They do some good stuff. And I think what you said there about these being Tory policies, I mean, I'm sure many people think about it in that way, but I think many people may now start thinking about it in the same way that I do, whereas I don't think these are Tory policies. I think these are actually, unfortunately, Labour policies.